Welcome to So Guided, a spiritual travel guide for the curious.
Join us as we dive into the mystical, high-vibe ways we can connect to the universe and ourselves. We are trying anything and everything woo-woo. Whatever the result, mind-blowing, unbelievable, or hilarious, we promise to share in truth.
Ready to explore? Suspend disbelief and let's discover the mysterious together.
Hello and welcome to another episode of So Guided. Today we are talking about near-death experiences, also known as NDEs. We've got some stories that will make you rethink everything you've ever known about being human and the afterlife. You've got questions, so do we. Let's do this. Hello.
Hello, it's Jenny here.
And Carissa.
We are about to hop into a very cool subject. This is inspired by the Telepathy Tapes and their new season 2. If you haven't heard it, jump on it. But what we're going to dive into is near-death experience. And near-death experience is when someone is close to death or experience death of their actual body. Their soul releases from their physical form and they have an otherworldly experience. And we have some really fun things to go about this. Have we had one? No, we have not. So we're actually going to do some storytelling today. We are going to read some stories that pretty much blow our mind. We have a few of them we're going to share and hopefully they bring some light to your day too. But what's really crazy as you read through them is that there are common themes that pop up over and over and over again. And we honestly feel like NDEs are one of the rare things that we investigate that almost feel evidential more than anything.
100%.
Wouldn't you say?
I feel like this has been something that we have been interested in and fascinated by since the beginning of our journey, even to the point that you had recommended a show on Netflix, The OE, that was a series that like delved into near-death experiences, which was unbelievable. And even before that, I feel like this is something that we've been so excited to talk about.
Yeah, I think of all the things too. This makes me feel comforted when I hear about them. If I'm having a bad week and I read some near-death experience stories, I feel better about our life and our world. So we're going to share those with you and hopefully excite you on the subject too. But first, what is your weekly woo-woo?
Oh, mine's a quick one. I have been in dire need of a haircut and I'm really bad about scheduling it and knowing like when my schedule allows for a haircut. My person is up in Boston and she's always busy. And so again, I feel like I get one haircut a year and it was due time. And I was going to like text her because I had like a free window in my schedule. I was going to text her the day before and I got sidetracked just hoping for a cancellation and I didn't. And then I was driving into the city and I was like, I'm going to like just text her. There's no way she has an opening. So I texted her and I was like, any chance you have an opening? And she's like, I just got a 3-hour cancellation. She was supposed to dye someone's hair and they had canceled. She had this huge window, which normally like it'd be like I'd be trying to squeeze into a short window. I was able to pick the perfect time. I went in and got my haircut. And even she, who's like not like, oh, like, you know, we're always talking about woo-woo. She was like, oh my God, that was such a sign. You knew. She's like, you knew I was going to be free. She's like, it was so meant to be. And we couldn't stop talking about how meant to be it was for me to get a haircut and what a sign it was. So I'm taking these little wins and these little woo-woos and I was so happy, and it felt like
true.
It was,
it's true. You manifested that
and I knew it. I knew she was going to be. Or I didn't. You know, I was like hoping, but I was like, oh my God, she literally just got a cancellation. So
I love it.
Love it.
Speedy manifestation.
It was.
I'd like to make mine short, but I'm not sure that my woo-woo is. However, I have to give a little background. Long ago, speaking of the Telepathy Tapes, I went to an event at our local salt cave that was to talk about the Telepathy Tapes for people who are loving it. And there was a very cool group of humans that were collected there in the salt cave that night. And it was such a special group that the facilitator of the group reached out afterwards and said, I think the people who are here are special. Would you like to meet regularly? So we actually do. So every other month or so, we go to the salt cave, and I think there's 7 of us, and each of us has kind of something special about ourselves, and we'll talk about a little bit about spiritual woo-woo, and we usually do a meditation with the intention to go somewhere. So very relative to our subject matter today, now that I get at. And one of the things we have tried to do is astral project or meditate and go talk to a spirit guide. But unfortunately, the last one I had to miss. A really sweet side story is that my dad is in the group with me.
It.
So it's such
my
like
favorite part.
I know. So it's like the sweetest bonding thing. So my dad's in the group with me. So I missed the last one. It was the only one I missed. And apparently it was a really special one. Everyone meditated and they went to meet and talk to their spirit guides.
Okay.
And then after they do the meditation, the group shares it. And a woman that's in the group across from my dad said, I actually received a message for you. Are you comfortable with me sharing it? I was told it was for you.
For your dad?
For my dad.
Okay.
She said, my spirit guide said, your grandson is not doing as well as you think he is. And he needs some extra support right now. And please address it. And he's going to be okay. But there's more to what meets the eye right now. Unbeknownst to my dad, even sharing this with me, Oliver last week had told me, Mom, I'm not doing well. And I had thought he was doing wonderful and adjusting to the school year. He seemed really acclimated. Again, just for backup reference, Oliver has autism that has recently been diagnosed, and we're managing our way through his life. And he goes in and out of some depression. And I really thought he was doing awesome. And he had just told me that the week before. My dad got a message from the group.
Wow.
And as a result, action happened because I told Brian, listen, hon, I know we were thinking he's doing better, but he might be masking. We need to make sure he's solid and we're taking care of him. And it put it on my radar that he wasn't okay.
Oh my goodness. How fascinating, though, that a woman got that for
us.
You in the group and shared it.
How cool is that?
That is so cool. Like, I feel like you hear about those things happening and it's like, how can that happen? Like, I feel like the universe is always conspiring to help us. And so they do it. Like, the guy didn't come directly to your dad, but it went to someone else who could like get the message, receive it, and share it.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
Really cool.
Man, you should be flowing with that information. That's great. That's wow.
All right. Well, it's funny, though, that I brought that group up because we are actively jumping into the idea of exploring the other realm. What is it? How do we communicate it? What is there? So, that's a little bit about near-death experience. So near-death experiences, we've all heard about them.
Yep.
Someone gets in a car accident. They later report they saw their body and what happened and light and tunnels and all that. And because we don't have a solid story, we looked up a couple stories that we thought one is a classic story to talk about. And one is you found was one of the most detailed accounts ever recorded. We think that's fascinating. And I'm reading a book where there's a few excerpts of really beautiful, specific moments or feelings. So let's share them. Let's share these really cool stories.
Well, what I think is neat is that we've done a lot of research on near-death experiences. Like, we've listened to many of these because we both do find it very validating. And there are some really cool ones out there that can be validated because that out-of-body experience that happens, like, these people are in many cases clinically dead. And when they come back, they can actually share things that they saw, things people said, that there's no way that their brain could have been able to see that, hear that. And like, even doctors are starting to say, like, there's no medical way that this person should know that stuff. And so, like, not only are like really interesting, they also go back like thousands and thousands of years. So like, I feel like one of the things we did learn in the telepathy tapes, or we learned, but they shared, and I buy into it, is that many times people are saying that these near-death experiences that go all the way back like thousands of years,
reported forever.
They actually inform how people see and perceive heaven. So a lot of our like thoughts on the afterlife aren't just like made up and past, like they aren't just like pulled arbitrary out of thin air. They're actually from near-death experiences that have been recorded and shared from like thousands of years before. And even those at times were validated in that like someone would come back from a near-death experience and have seen someone on the other side who had died. And like, because in that time there was no phones, like you would take months to even find out someone was dead. And then they would learn that that person that they had seen on the other side was dead. So like, I love that there's like ways to validate this stuff. And so the information that comes back from these people, because in this case, they're so validated, really resonates with me. And it makes me like excited to share some of this stuff. So the first story we're going to share is the near-death experience of Julia Evans. She's also known as the Lily Nurse. She was up in Canada, and she was a nurse at a hospital. I'm just going to read this because I feel like it will be easier just to read the whole story kind of in her words. So Julia had arrived at the hospital where she worked, a seasoned nurse. She felt a scratchy sensation in her throat. Instinctively, her mind raced. Did I eat something strange? Am I getting a cold? Did I inhale something? She looked around the staff break room and saw at the nursing station a fresh bouquet of lilies. She knew she was allergic to lilies, but hadn't expected anything serious that morning. Suddenly, her throat tightened like swallowing sandpaper. Her skin began to turn blue. Colleagues sprung into action. One ran for medication, another phoned her husband. A doctor arrived and gave her an injection, only to realize that it was the wrong drug, a tenfold dose of an EpiPen, leading to a rapid heart rhythm. Julia describes, I was drowning in air. She realized with horror that she was losing control of her body. My heart exploded. I went into darkness. They lost me. Then everything shifted. Julia describes entering a black void. No body, no senses as she knew them. Her beliefs and identity pixelated away. She distinctly heard her mother saying, "It's okay, honey. Mommy's here. Don't cry." Julia's mother had died when she was 3 years old, and it was the first time she had heard her voice so clear, and she knew instinctively that it was her mother and this was real. She felt in between two worlds. In the dark, she couldn't see anything, but could feel and hear her mother. She hovered above her body, watching the medical team working frantically below. She tried to say, I would come back if I could, but was powerless. At one moment, she heard, we lost her again. That was the anchor pulling her farther in. Suddenly, she was drawn into a realm of intense light and color, but still beyond ordinary words. She felt a profound, all-encompassing love and sensed loved ones who had already passed away. She tuned into their pain as though absorbing what they had gone through. In that moment, she realized she was home, not in her hospital body, not on earth as she'd always known it. Time warped, senses deepened. She said that no human words could fully describe what she had experienced. It was beyond bliss and more real than anything she ever felt on earth. She felt the gift of full self-love. The only way she can explain it is if you've ever had a baby, and when you look at that baby and feel unconditional love, like you want to encompass them with every being of your heart and body, but it was even beyond that. Then, thud, she was abruptly ejected back into her body. She hit so hard. When she looked down, she saw herself naked like a newborn. It felt heavy, but she was glad she had come back. When she looked to her right, she saw a nurse from another floor holding her hand. The nurse said, I brought you back. The nurse's name was Cheryl, her mother's name. Julia knew her mother had brought her back. In the weeks and months after, she wrestled with processing, did this really happen? She eventually accepted that yes, she glimpsed the light, she felt the love, she heard her mother. The experience changed Julia forever. She reassessed her life, relationships, work. She found she now had a heightened sensitivity, intuitively perceiving people's deeper selves in her words. She could see past loved ones and genetic lines surrounding other people. At first, she was afraid to share her gifts, but after years, she now shares her story openly. She went on to write a book, The Lily Nurse, Rebooted, Rebirthed, and Finding a New You. Sharing the journey of healing and transformation followed. Her message: life is precious. There's something beyond the physical. Love is the foundational currency. And when you come back changed.
Wow.
Isn't that Isn't that profound? Isn't that absolutely? Yeah. I mean, she wrote a book. I've heard her on a few podcasts. Like, she's like another well-documented example of someone who was there, and she was able to recount what had happened in the room when they were working on her, trying to bring her back. And one of the things that fascinates me about this the most is the gifts that she was able to get when she came back. Mm-hmm. So not only did she feel this love and this unconditional self-love, when she came back, she said she could see the loved ones who had passed on from other people. And could literally see their grandparents, their lines, grandparents, and those behind them, supporting them. I mean, I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, this story is pretty much walks the journey. You hear a lot on all the steps of the process. One thing that I know both of us got hit on when we researched story after story after story is so many people reported that felt more real than our world is real. 100%. And you mentioned that she said that, and that keeps coming up, and that trips me out in almost a good way, that our life is a simulation of sorts, and that's more real. This is more the dream, and that's more real. And that little tidbit got me in this one, because I keep hearing that pop up.
It's
and pop up
100%
and pop
a
up.
reoccurring theme. And like, again, we're so in this. We're like, how can that even be? But when these people come back, they're like, no, that is what's real. This is the box.
Not.
This is a container. This is a small perspective of what really is out there. Like here, we're like looking through like a very small lens. There, it's expansive.
Huge.
And there's what's real.
Right.
So yeah, that was such a common theme and something that resonated. I also think the unconditional love that people
Yes.
feel. And like, I like the way that she used the analogy of a baby. Cause I know that like, we both have kids and like you feel that love where it's like, you want to just engulf them in love. And she's like, it's beyond
Bigger.
that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, could you imagine like loving something more than like your child,
Right.
And she's like feeling that. And she said the biggest gift was that type of love for herself.
Yes.
Like, and so it's not just like
Yes.
loving others. Like, could you imagine loving yourself?
No,
Like,
it's
I mean, I say this
inconceivable.
all the time. I say I love my kids more than myself. Of course I do. You know, like you just do. I mean, I feel like you just
That's right.
do, and you do anything for your child. And so it was just like to think that you would have that type of feeling for yourself and be supportive of yourself. Again, I think it takes going to another world to feel that way.
One thing when I hear these stories is obviously I don't want to have a scary almost die moment, but I think what a crazy gift that they've gotten. And I'm sure you don't want something bad to happen, but I almost am jealous. I want to know in this lifetime and not wait till I die to feel the love they're talking about. And in these stories, so many people come back and the self-love comes back.
Yes,
and
yes.
that's the part that's cool. It's not only just like a lot of people report cool, new, like intuitive gifts
Yes,
like
yes,
that one.
yes.
What is more beautiful than coming back and actually loving yourself?
I know.
And I can't even conceive of it. And I don't want to wait to die to feel it. Why can't we feel that now?
I know, but I think a cautionary tale there is, again, because we've done so much around this, there is this feeling like some people do report after such an experience coming back and not knowing then how to like continue living on earth.
True,
You know what I'm saying? There is like a part where some people are depressed afterwards, or they think they're crazy because they're not always supported. People don't always think what they're saying is real. And like they know something that there's so much more and they crave, like she wanted to come back and she wanted to be with her family and like she like did, but like, when you go to a place of this bliss and love and then to come back and being put back in this container with a thud, like it may not always feel so wonderful.
It sounds like an integration period is needed for everyone where people doubt what happened,
yes.
even though they knew it was more true than anything they ever experienced. And then there's like an acceptance and yeah, from the story, the person I'm going to share with too, there was a period of like, how do I survive being in the world now that I know what I know?
Yes.
Ultimately, most people leads to being the storytellers of their beautiful, like treasured gift. They're back to tell us so that we could believe, which is awesome. But I can imagine, honestly, not to be like dark, but before we turned the recording on, we were talking about politics and the divisiveness in the world and how hard that all is. Imagine being somewhere that's that kind of love, the baby love.
Yeah.
I like that newborn baby love, but it's for yourself, it's for everything, and it's for you. It seems so amazing. That would be very hard in this very tumultuous, very divisive world we're in to say, how do you even fit in here?
Right. Well, that reminds me of you sometimes because we've had this conversation of you being like the alien from a planet of love. And sometimes you like feel like from the outside, you're like, oh, everything's great for Jenny. It looks great. But you're like, no, it's so hard because I do believe that you've come from a different planet of love. I do. It reminds me of that. It has got to be difficult. And it's amazing how even like this woman, it took her like time to share her story. She bought into it, but she couldn't share it. She couldn't you're really sharing yourself and sharing your truth. And I think when we come down to earth in this like place of like learning, we do make a commitment to go under the veil. So like as much as we believe and we want us like to see more, like we're here not knowing almost probably for some sort of protection. Because if we're here and knew there was so much more, we'd want to go to so much more. Does that make sense? Like how I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Like
that's such an important nugget. And I think about this a lot. We've talked about it, but just to recap, we genuinely believe that we are souls that keep coming back.
Yeah.
We do. And we believe there's a life in between lives. We believe we pick our souls, our parents, every part of that. We've talked about this on the show many a times, but just to rehash, that's something we do believe in. And I always wonder, why? Why do we choose to go and forget everything we know? And that's such a good point. The reason is, how could we learn our lessons if we knew everything we know?
Right.
We actually have to be veiled in order to proceed.
Right.
The lesson wouldn't be learned.
Right.
Right.
And
so we have to. But that effing frustrating.
It's frustrating. But you know what's neat is we are supposedly learn this lesson down here. And then when we go back to this other side and we're expansive again, like we bring our lessons to the whole consciousness. So every one of us being an individual and being unique, like we all learn different lessons. And that's how we give it back to the whole universe or whatever, you know? And so it is like a commitment to do, but it like, we're like, I don't know, somebody used to like wonder why.
But that's also what you just said is why every one of us has something to contribute and are loved by whatever source is. And honestly, when we say source, it could be whoever it is for you, whatever your deity is.
Yes.
And I think they're all the one and the same personally, and it's okay, whatever it resonates for this lifetime that you associate with. But I just think it's so beautiful. And it even tells to the story of where there isn't even good or bad. Like someone who's in prison goes back to source and has a new story to add to the collective. Like we all are as beautiful. They say God loves you. You are God. And that's a hard term to accept over life. But our stories and when we research, I start to really feel and understand, okay, yeah, I have shame. I've done wrong things, but that's a part of what I'm giving back when I go back.
Right.
When we reconnect to the ocean of God, like my little water drop is carrying all the information I gathered, and we're all important. And I mean that to go back to the self-love thing, right? Our self-love is because we are contributing this. This information we've gathered is the new info.
Right.
It's so cool.
And to love ourselves and like the universe, God, however you want to say it, is not necessarily judging us. We have to self-accept, and like we do as humans, we are going to make mistakes. That's our learning, and that's why we're here, is to learn, to bring back. So, if you want to share kind of your next story, so I think this ties, what you're about to share ties in a lot to how people feel or perceive when they have a near-death experience. More like insights, right?
Totally. So this book I actually mentioned a couple podcasts ago is called Dying to Be Me, and it's by Anita Moorjani. And this is a person who had terminal cancer and was one of the stories where she was clinically dead. And really, truly, one of the crazy cases for the other side of it is when she came back, it made no sense that she survived. And she went on to heal herself. And just like your lovely person, she went on to tell her story, but had a period where she couldn't share it and had to process and all that. But because this is a whole book, instead of it being an overarching story, there's just a few passages that really made me feel something, and I wanted to share. And she wrote it so beautifully. So again, these are in her words. I continued to sense myself expanding further and further outward, drawing away from my physical surroundings. It was as though I were no longer restricted by the confines of space and time, and continued to spread myself out to occupy a greater expanse of consciousness. I felt a sense of freedom and liberation that I had never experienced in my physical life before. I can only describe this as the combination of a sense of joy mixed with a generous sprinkling of jubilation and happiness. It stemmed from being released from my sick and dying body, a feeling of jubilant emancipation from all the pain that my illness had caused me. As I continued to plunge deeper into the other realm, expanding outward, becoming everyone and everything, I felt all my emotional attachments to my loved ones and my surroundings slowly fall away. What I can only describe as superb and glorious unconditional love surrounded me, wrapping me tight as I continued to let go. The term unconditional love really doesn't do justice to the feeling, as these words have been overused to the point of having lost their intensity. But the physical battle I'd fought for so very long had finally released its strong hold on me, and I had a beautiful experience of freedom. I didn't feel as though I'd physically gone somewhere else. It was more as though I'd awakened. Perhaps I'd been finally roused from a bad dream. My soul was finally realizing its true magnificence, and in doing so, it was expanding beyond my body and this physical world. It extended further and further outward until it encompassed not only this existence, but continued to expand into another realm that was beyond this time and space, and at the same time included it.
Oh, that's cool. I like the inclusion of the time and space. I mean, If like we're not hearing a theme of unconditional love, but beyond that, I mean, like, I don't think we can even process I don't think we can process even the intensity of what that means. Or like, we hear the words, but we can't even feel what that means.
And every story says these words aren't going to do it justice because it's impossible to explain. But this idea that love is truly like the end result of this is so cool. That's where we're going home.
I like how she articulates that it's not separate, but that it's one of this too, because I feel like when we lose loved ones, when we feel like they're in heaven or they're away, but like her saying that it's all part of the same, so that she's still not separate, but encompassing. I feel like that is a comforting way of explaining like where she's going, what she's doing. I like that.
One thing that you had said to me that you said when you heard these stories, it always freaked you out a little bit, is in the out-of-body experiences is like our souls just drifting out in the world, right? So the idea that you maintain, first of all, a sense of, while we lose our ego, of some version of identity, which probably isn't the right word, but our soul is our soul.
Well, I feel
we keep that.
One of the things I get like nervous about when I think about like death, I don't think we die. I don't think we're gone. I think clearly there's more, but I feel like, do I really want to be like just energy or just an orb? Like, I feel like I like the physicality.
Yes,
like, I want to be able to hug my kids. Like, I want to be able to like eat food. I'm like, how is it like great to be like non-physical? And I get like nervous that that's like a bigger sacrifice than it's ever made out to be. Because even though it's all unconditional love and people feel happy, I'm gonna be like, I feel like I like having a physical essence. And so I'm like, that always like makes me worried. And I think the next thing you're going to read speaks to this. And this was one of the things that you shared with me before that actually let me like breathe easy.
Totally. It does. Yeah, it made you feel better. All right. So she goes on later to say, in that state of clarity, I also realized that I'm not who I'd always thought I was. Here I am without my body, race, culture, religion, or beliefs. Yet I continue to exist. Then what am I? Who am I? I certainly don't feel reduced or smaller in any way. On the contrary, I haven't ever been this huge, this powerful, or this all-encompassing. Wow, I have never ever felt this way. There I was without my body or any of my physical traits, yet my pure essence continued to exist, and it was not a reduced element of my whole self. In fact, I felt far greater and more intense and expansive than my physical being. Magnificent, in fact. I felt eternal, as if I'd always existed and always would, without beginning or end. I was filled with the knowledge that I was simply magnificent.
Oh, I love that.
That
is so good. That's one of the most comforting freaking paragraphs I've ever heard. Seriously. It really is. I freaking love that.
I know.
Don't you? Oh my God. It makes me feel, because I do. Like, because even with all this stuff, even with all the stuff we believe, it's still scary. The idea of like death or not being here, not being with your loved ones, or when people like, even when you know like people pass on, but they're still with you, all the stuff that we believe, it doesn't mean you're not like afraid.
Oh,
right?
Goodness gracious. No, it did. I will say my belief on death did change. I was almost a non-believer in everything, like darkness, before this true awakening. And I know that I feel buoyed that there is something. I definitely have that change.
That's interesting. I've never thought that. I've always believed there's something more. I've never had like, as like, even like, and not so tied to like, I went to church when I was younger, not so tied like what you're kind of told
heaven,
as a kid, not so tied to heaven and hell at all. But I always thought, I don't know, I've always believed there was more.
Right.
Yet it still is like scary.
Well, I guess I'd call it more of a pendulum swing, right? Of like, is it darkness? And not knowing the answer to, I'm interested in ghosts and I've always liked the past lives. I don't know that my story was evolved enough to be that it was black or to connect the dots, but it was certainly not faithful belief.
Yeah.
And I know that I've altered to faithful, but I absolutely agree with you that though we have faith that we are reincarnated and all the soul stuff we were talking about, I do believe all this earth school stuff and everything.
Yeah.
I am deeply frightened about the oneness comment where, all right, so like we're the droplet and we were of water and we return to the ocean. okay, that sounds like, okay, I'll be a part of the ocean, but I still want to be me.
Well, that's what I kept
Yes.
saying. I feel like I won't really like that. Like,
Yes. You know better than God.
But you know what I'm saying? I'm like, oh, what if that's not really, I'm not really like into
I'm
that.
not buying
like, I'm
this.
like, yeah, I'm like, what if like that doesn't sound like that great to me? But that's what scares me. So that's the first time I've heard, because sometimes I think that's exactly what it is. I'm like, I don't know if I just want to be like energy. I'm like an orb, or like, you know, into like one and like going back to one.
I'm with you. With you. Well, I think a part of our whole existence is so strongly our identity of self and our ego. Our ego rules our life no matter how hard we try, right? So I can see how our human sense can't understand that. But I will say, like, I wonder if you ever have had moments in your life where you felt oneness to help bring that feeling home. And one of my times that I was singing this is like a concert, and I brought it up once, and I felt just like, if you think about these little moments in life where you just felt one with the larger group, and it was at a concert, and it was the last song, and it was beautiful. We were all moved by the frequency of the song, that we all were connected by the music we loved, and everyone had lights and either did their phone or their lighter. And I looked around, and it was one of those moments where I felt the true essence of my soul enjoying that moment, and one and super loving with every stranger in the room. And it's so beautiful. I bet if you like look through your life, like there are little moments that we could cling to where you did have a feeling of oneness. It could even be a moment with your little family, you know, your little family of 5, where maybe you were in a moment and it's like Christmas morning and it's just such a beautiful, shared moment.
Yeah.
But there are certain like things that do happen that give you a glimpse of how that could be. And beautiful. I think it is beautiful, and it's the best feeling ever. I mean, one of my weirdest, man, am I tangent-y today, but like one of my weirdest side positives of having been in New York on 9/11 that I've shared with you that's so strange is one of my days of oneness.
Yeah.
I was stuck in the city, having, you know, been covered from running from the towers. And of course it was horrifying. I have a million traumatic stories to tell you, but one of the most beautiful things that sticks to me this day, and every anniversary is as strong as the trauma that is with it, is the beautiful nature of humans coming together. Yeah. I witnessed strangers helping strangers. The community was one. A bodega handed free sandwich to me when I was starving and had no money that day of cash, so I couldn't get food. And, you know, strangers helped me on the street. The beauty I felt for strangers as a whole, and the oneness, and truly our whole nation. Do you remember seeing flags and feeling your heart flutter? Like there was a oneness that was created. And I know those are two strange stories, but I think the point is it does exist. And if you connect to the moments in your life you had it, that's what we have to look forward to. We're still us.
Right.
We're still us in that moment, but we're also one with these people, and there's extraordinary love there.
Right. Like you're still like, you're an individual as part of the whole collective.
Yeah.
Like you're not disappearing into something and being gone. Like you're now just like, you're actually now supported, and you're feeling the love of all versus like this ego that like blocks it. Yeah. I can see that. Yeah. I know your 9/11 like gives me goosebumps every time we talk about it, because I can feel that. I can feel that.
What I'm talking about. And we all probably felt that feeling of oneness after. We were one. Mm-hmm. We were together as one, and like healing is one. In any case, I do think that there's, you know, the other side of that too, is you were saying how you like to be hugged and held in the physicality of body. But one of the cool stories that keeps coming back on all the near-death experiences is people do come back and say, look at this beautiful life we get to live. We get to eat a delicious food and drink wine and love and touch and even, you know, have sex. And
there's a gratitude that comes along with it that they then like because there is elements of earth that you do not have. Even with the unconditional love and the bliss, that like there is things here that we need to enjoy and that we need to like appreciate, because you know, like that's, I remember like hearing like from a psychic or something, or someone came through, and that was one of the things the person missed on the other side was hugging, was like, you know, was that like feeling that you get of holding someone's hand, eating food, all the things that are so like enjoyable now, like you would miss that, and that's okay, but there's still unconditional love. Totally. So I feel like it's like nice to like look at that now and enjoy it. Yeah. It is one of the gifts and the reasons that we're here, is to enjoy that.
All right, so circling back to Anita, and this is the last passage I'm going to read, but I thought that this was really interesting about the perception of what you learn when you experience a near-death experience. I think it's fascinating. The way she explained it was really nice. Imagine, if you will, a huge dark warehouse. You live there with only one flashlight to see by. Everything you know about what's contained within this enormous space is what you've seen by the beam of that one small flashlight. Whenever you want to look for something, you may or may not find it, but that doesn't mean that that thing doesn't exist. It's there, but you just haven't shone your light on it. And even when you do, the object you see may be difficult to make out. You may get a fairly clear idea of it, but often you're left wondering. You can only see what your light is focused on and only identify that which you already know. That is what physical life is like. We're only aware of what we focus our senses on at any given time, and we could only understand what is already familiar. Next, imagine that one day someone flicks on a switch. There, for the first time, in a sudden burst of brilliance and sound and color, you could see the entire warehouse, and it's nothing like anything you'd ever imagined. Lights are blinking, flashing, glowing, shooting sparks of red, yellow, blue, and green. You see colors you don't recognize, ones you've never seen before. Music floods the room with fantastic kaleidoscope surround sound melodies you've never heard before. Neon signs pulse and boogie in rainbow strobes of cherry, lemon, vermilion, grape, lavender, and gold. Electric toys run on tracks up, down, and around shelves with indescribable colored boxes, packages, papers, champagne, food, wines from every corner of the world. Skyrockets suddenly explode in starburst, setting off sparkling flowers, cascades of cold fire, whistling embers, and animations of light. The vastness, complexity, depth, and breadth of everything going on around you is almost overwhelming. You can't see all the way to the end of this space, and you know there's more to it than what you can take in from this torrent that's tantalizing your senses and emotions. But you do get a strong feeling that you're actually part of something alive, infinite, and altogether fantastic, that you are a part of a large and unfolding tapestry that goes beyond sight and sound.
Wow. She's really amazing at describing that and and articulating that with our concern of the body and what we have here, the way she does that, it's we're again, in this little container, only seeing what we focus on. And even that is blurry in comparison. Yep. That's crazy. It's I feel like we were talking about how we love plants and how plants are so magical. And I'm just thinking I'm looking at this plant as we're saying this and oh yeah, we see a plant and growing, but we really have no idea how a plant knows how to grow.
No.
The magic that surrounds that. It's that's when she's saying there's only certain things
that's right.
That was...
Well, and when we've talked about that too, is when I think about, we talk about mediums or psychics and people that are truly experiencing these crazy gifts, I think that they have the bigger flashlight. I love this relationship of the warehouse, and they might actually be carrying 5 flashlights, and we have one. Their veil is a little bit more lifted.
Right.
And I just think that was such a cool description. It makes sense.
It does. It makes a lot of sense.
Something that's hard to understand makes more sense.
Yeah.
One of the stories I learned along the way, it could have been last season's telepathy tapes, but I think it was so interesting, is someone describing our world like if you were Mario and Mario Brothers, right? So you're in the video game and you're Mario Brothers and you're going deep, 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 right? And that's your whole world and that's everything. But actually, there's a person outside of it holding a controller that has a whole another world. And it kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah.
It's how much of a container and how small what our little flashlight shows us. And that makes sense.
Yeah. It's a great analogy to picture it.
Yeah.
And it makes a ton of sense. Okay. I love that. So we're going to jump a little bit to another story. And it had this one's I feel goes in a little bit of a different direction, in that we found the story of John Davis. And he has a validated near-death experience, and it's one of the most specific that has been recorded. So he remembers the most. It's really interesting what he says on the other side. So I wanted to share, I'll share this. It's kind of long, but it's really fascinating in the directions that he goes. And then we can figure out what we think about this one.
Okay. I haven't heard it.
Yeah,
so
what we find this one yet. Jenny hasn't heard this one yet. So this is a story of John Davis. John Davis had been cruising on his moped, wind in his face, when suddenly crashed. He hit a tree and tore the tendons in his hand. The surgery to repair it should have been routine, but something went wrong. John had a severe allergic reaction to the anesthesia. His heart stopped, and in that moment, the one that separated life from death, he says he found himself somewhere else. The hospital, the noise, the pain was gone. 1 second he was in the operating room. The next he was standing upright, awake, and somehow more alive than he'd ever felt. He looked around and realized this wasn't Earth. He was in a colossal building made of gleaming white marble with 30-foot columns stretching up into eternity. The air shimmered with a quiet intelligence, like the space itself was conscious. To his left, long tunnels glowed faintly within the marble. To his right, vast tables were filled with figures who looked human but brighter. Not angels with wings, but beings of calm, radiant power. One of them approached him and spoke without words. "My name is Alan. I'm your guide." He could hear him without him speaking at all. Alan explained that John was in what's known as the Orientation Center, the place every soul passes through after dying, to remember where they came from and where they're going next. As John tried to take it all in, he noticed a man appearing through one of the tunnels, confused, older, just arriving. Two luminous beings gently took the man's hand and led him to a table. As they spoke, the man's face began to transform, wrinkles smoothing, gray hair fading to brown, his body becoming vibrant and whole again. John learned that every soul returns to the age of about 30, the prime of life when they arrive there. Alan smiled and said, "That's what happens when you first come home." Then Alan led John down a few marble steps into what he called the Gardens of Welcome. What John saw took his breath away. Emerald grass that seemed to glow from within, flowers and colors he couldn't even describe, hues that didn't exist on Earth. A warm breeze that carried laughter, music, and light. And then, running towards him, his two childhood dogs and two cats, healthy, joyful, leaping into his arms. He could feel their fur, their hearts, their love. It hit him all at once. Nothing we love is ever lost. It hit him all at once. Nothing we love is ever lost. Alan told him there was more to see. They walked into a beautiful white building lined with what looked like flat-screen televisions, something that didn't exist in the 1980s when this happened. On those screens, scenes from John's life began to play. He watched every moment of his existence, not as a detached observer, but feeling everything he had made others feel. He relived small acts of kindness, like helping a classmate on crutches in middle school. He didn't even remember the moment until he saw it again, but he could feel the gratitude of that boy as if it were his own. And he also felt moments where he'd hurt others, not through punishment, but through understanding. There was no judgment here, only learning. Alan explained, "This is your life review, the lessons you choose, the love you gave, the growth you still seek." From there, Alan brought John into another marble hall, a dome with a golden doorway. Inside, a massive floating screen illuminated the space. "Here," Alan said, "we remember where we've been." What John saw next shattered everything he thought he knew. The screen filled with lifetimes, a monk in Southeast Asia, a cobbler in Eastern Europe, a fisherman casting nets in the Middle East. Each one was him. Different faces, different countries, same soul. John had grown up Catholic. Reincarnation wasn't something he'd ever believed in, but here it was, shown without judgment, only truth. Next, they entered a circular temple of light. Shelves of scrolls lined the walls, each one tied with a colored ribbon. "Every soul has one," Alan said. "It's your life plan, what you choose to learn before you were born." John reached for a scroll tied with a blue ribbon, but Alan stopped him gently. "You can't read it yet," he said. "You have to live it first." In that instant, John understood. We all choose our lessons, even the hardest ones. Alan then led him into a vast library, ceilings 40 feet high, books stacked like glowing honeycombs. Souls sat at long tables reading, while others gathered in small rooms watching history replay on enormous floating screens. In one room, a woman observed a battle between Native Americans and soldiers, feeling every emotion of everyone involved. "These are the records," Alan said. "Every life, every moment perfectly preserved." A woman approached and asked if John had any questions. He said he didn't, which he still regrets. Alan shared that the woman works here as a choice due to her love of learning. Everyone can have a job, but it's different than on Earth. They work where they have passion, like teaching or supporting. They moved into a dome that looked like a planetarium next. The ceiling exploded into stars. At first, John saw familiar constellations, the planets of our solar system. But then the view expanded. Dozens of stars became hundreds. Hundreds became thousands. He realized he was seeing inhabited worlds, different atmospheres, colors, civilizations beyond imagination. Alan's voice echoed, "You think Earth is the only school? There are endless classrooms in the universe." John felt awe rush through him, a wave of understanding that creation was infinite, alive, and interconnected. Finally, Alan brought him before a grand castle carved with radiant stone. Red carpets flowed down endless corridors lined with portraits of souls, some in robes, others in simple clothes, all radiant. Here, Alan told him, souls choose their next path. Some study beauty, others compassion. Some choose power or patience. Every life is a lesson, and every lesson leads back to love. In that moment, John understood heaven wasn't a resting place, it was a school, a realm of remembering, learning, and creation. Alan turned to him, the light intensifying around them. It's not your time, he said softly. You need to go back. John felt himself pulled backwards through the marble halls, the gardens, the tunnel of light, until suddenly he slammed back into his body. The first sound he heard was the piercing beat of the heart monitor, a doctor's voice. We got him. It had been 7 minutes. That's how long his heart had stopped. But John swears he spent what felt like days, maybe even weeks, exploring the other side. When he woke, everything was different. He wasn't afraid of death anymore. He could sense people's emotions, their energy, their intentions. He devoted the rest of his life to sharing what he'd seen. And when people asked him what heaven was like, he'd smile and say, it's real, it's solid, it's structured. It's school and home and love all in one. And the biggest lesson, there is no death, only life changing shape. That's a good story, right?
Yeah, that was juicy.
I know.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's one of the and like we can't validate what he saw on the other side, but his near-death experience was validated. He had been dead for 7 minutes. He was able to before he had went pulled up, he was able to kind of capture what had happened in the room before he had left. But I mean, after we've done a lot of we've listened to a lot of these, we've read about a lot of these. I can't stop thinking about some of the commonalities that we hear along these.
Oh my gosh.
In most stories, there is a life review. Yep. And so in his life review, that was the first aspect. So he touched on that. That was the first place he went. And I feel in most of these life reviews, you feel the emotions that you caused others. You feel the pain, or you feel that gratitude, you feel the happiness, whatever emotion, you can actually feel a 360 approach of what your actions made someone feel. And I love that he articulated this, but it's done through not judgment, but from learning. Because I feel we're, again, on earth, there's a lot of oh, you're punished if you do something wrong. You're it's not punishment. It's just you have to be able to feel how you treat others and how that impacts them. And it's a place of learning and not judgment, because there's all unconditional love, encompassing all of that. So I think that was something that we've heard from a lot of these stories, but I love the way that he was able to kind of share that.
Absolutely. The one thing I wrote down while I was hearing your story is the no judgment.
Yes.
That's super comforting. And that speaks to a lot of religions, to saying you are loved no matter what, like we were saying. And the no judgment is really comforting.
Yeah.
You learn these things, but you're not wrong. There's no shame. There's no judgment.
Right. There's self-acceptance there. Another thing I liked from his story was, we have become huge believers in reincarnation.
Huge.
And that he was able to take into a spot and see his other lives. And he was Catholic here. So it's not something that he had gone in with a preconceived notion that, hey, we reincarnate, this is what happens. But he, it was just, it is what it was. It is what it is. And in those other lives, he wasn't Catholic, he was a monk, he was different people, but always the same soul.
Well, right. And that's the evidence to again, if you're a Catholic and this is an ego story that our brain's putting out in the world, some scientists will argue back to all this goodies, is you would not, your ego wouldn't tell you a story of different religions you were, and different faces, by the way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No, that was interesting. I also like that, in this story, he was only 21. And so he didn't have necessarily so he had I've heard before, a lot of people that he had known who had passed already. So this Alan that was his spirit guide was the one that welcomed him. And I thought that was neat, because again, we always talk about spirit guides or guardian angels, that there is always in, again, these near-death experiences, there's always someone there kind of welcoming you and making you feel safe when you get to the other side, which I thought was cool.
Very comforting. One of my other notes from it was the animals.
I know.
That melts my heart.
I love that.
Yes. I love the animals.
I know. I think it was interesting that he noted that everyone turns 30, which again, I don't know if that's real. And I think one of the things I from listening to a lot of these, that I do kind of feel there is sometimes what you do believe or feel in this world does translate there, and so he didn't mention this, but in some of them, they see different, they may see Jesus, if Jesus was important to them here, they may see the Buddha, so there are these other deities outside of a spirit guide that they see on the other side, that I feel is a commonality that has come before.
There is some processing of which it comes from the person you just were.
Yes,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And yet not, because this expanded to him seeing past lives in different religions. So very,
It's
very
weird.
interesting.
Yeah, there's like a duality there where it's like both.
And also, he's very descriptive of this marble pillars and all that, which was very cool. But I do have the belief, having heard these stories, that our brain, that's literally the opposite of what we're preaching here. It's like our soul is creating a visual that matches your storyline, what you accumulated, where your safety is.
Especially on the first, like when you first enter. Like especially like something
that.
where, especially like when it may all, God knows what happens after this, like the 7 minutes or whatever it is, like once you're over there. But I do think when you're entering, there's like something, there's a comfort that is there. And I do think it's so, you can't even imagine, like, what are these other colors? Like, almost all of them mention other colors. Music that they can't even describe. That's indescribable here. And how beautiful is music here? How could it be more beautiful somewhere else? And like also being able to like no one speaks with their mouth. It's all like telepathy. It's all done like through knowing. And like, again, the five senses aren't the five senses. It's so beyond there.
Time is another common theme, is that it's not the same and that we've created it linear, but it is not.
Yep. I think like the largest overarching theme across everything has got to be this unconditional love. And that you are there. We are here to learn through love. Like we are here like to learn love. And even like the choices we make, it all goes back to love.
Totally. Well, I'll tell you what, I think I started out saying this, but truly when I'm having a bad week or I'm too in the rut of every day, the granular minutia of our lives, I actually will go Google near-death experiences. There isn't a time I read about them that there isn't some memory inside of me that says this is right or makes me feel better that we're bigger than this moment we're in. So I just would leave with this is I just want to give a couple of resources if you're listening and you're like, I need more, I want more. The book I told you about is really beautiful, Dying to Be Me, and we will put it in the show notes. There's a channel I stumbled across on Instagram that I am obsessed with, and it's called the Coming Home Channel. And they do little bite-sized nuggets broken up into like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of someone sharing their near-death experience.
Cool. What's it called?
It's called the Coming Home Channel.
Okay.
At Coming Home Channel on Instagram. And honestly, sometimes the kids are like watching Dodo TV and I'm sitting next to them and I'll put on my headphones and be like, I'm just going to hear one of these. They always make me feel better.
Oh, cool.
And the other thing, and we've brought this up 10 times today, is that when you hear multiple, if you go and listen and you want more, wait till you see how many repeated themes are.
My God.
It is undeniable, the repeated themes, and it's so freaking comforting. So that's the other thing I love. So anyway, if you'd like more.
And I'll add one more to it because I like listen to this podcast a lot. I've mentioned it before. Our Paranormal Afterlife by like Simon Baum. He wrote a book and it's called like Validated Near-Death Experiences.
Okay.
And so he talks about ones that 100% have been validated through them leaving the out of body and then coming back and reporting back. So his shows have some really great ones to speak about for podcasting in his book, I feel like, if you're looking for more.
Awesome. Well, there you go. So if you're into it as much as we are and you're looking for high vibes and you want to believe in something greater, go keep researching this subject. But thanks for listening. This is our first storytelling episode.
Love it.
But it was super fun.
It was fun.
Thanks, guys.
Like the show? We'd love your support. Right now, we're doing an awesome giveaway. Leave us a review on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. Screenshot the review and send it to hello@soguided.com or DM us on Instagram at SoGuidedPodcast. You'll be entered to win a basket of our favorite woo-woo goodies, crystals, cacao, and all the high vibe goodies we love. Thank you for listening. We've loved being your spiritual travel guides and hope this made you feel more connected. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player. Your reviews help us create the guide that you are looking for. We'd also love to hear your stories.
You can follow and share your experiences with us on Instagram at So Guided Podcast. Your story might just be our next weekly woo-woo. Join us again next week as we continue to dig deeper into the universe. And remember, stay curious, ask the questions. You are so guided.